I think I've picked the perfect time to start covering Jujutsu Kaisen content on my channel, because with the release of chapter 261, we've had some incredibly explosive reveals. Let's dive straight into what's going on with the return of Satoru Gojo, or should we say the body of Gojo, which is being controlled by another sorcerer. This is a totally unpredictable plot twist that very few of us had seen coming. At the end of chapter 260, we were teased with the potential return of Gojo, the present day strongest sorcerer. During the fierce battle against the King of Curses, Sukuna, a mysterious figure who resembles Gojo steps onto the battlefield. This leaves everybody in shock, including Sukuna. In this video, I'll be breaking down and detailing everything that happens within Jujutsu Kaisen Chapter 261. How on earth has Gojo returned to the story, and how does this involve the characters of Yuta and Kenjaku? Be sure to stick around until the very end of this video, because I'll be talking about how the return of Gojo is limited to only 5 minutes. So without further delay, let's begin my analysis and review of chapter 261. Chapter 261 sees Sukuna battling Yuji as Yuji impales into his flesh, determined to crush his heart. However, just as Sukuna was about to retaliate by activating his domain expansion, the battle is interrupted by the return of a mysterious figure. As the dust settles, we witness the impossible, as Satoru Gojo appears out of nowhere. As he opens his eyelids, we see those iconic piercing blue eyes. But strangely, as the wind blows back his hair, those very strange stitch marks are seen across his forehead, which of course are reminiscent of Kenjaku. Sukuna's initial response is of shock, but he quickly begins to smile as he states, "So this is how you want to play." He punches Yuji as he then apologizes to his opponents, stating that he has underestimated them. Sukuna immediately knows what is going on, as he says that he didn't think that Yuta Akotsu was capable of going this far. We then spend the rest of the chapter in a couple of flashbacks, as we are shown Maki and Hikari disagreeing to something, but Hikari states that if they are all wiped out and there is no other option, then Yuta must do what he's got to do. Panda elaborates that if Gojo dies, then Rika can eat Kenjaku and copy his body hopping ability, which would thus allow Yuta to take over Gojo's body and re-enter the fight. While this is a very desperate course of action, it would massively raise their chances of winning, especially if the situation becomes bleak. Kusakabe offers an alternative, as he questions why can't Rika absorb a piece of Gojo's corpse and thus copy the Limitless, but Shoko explains that Yuta would be unable to use the Limitless without the Six Eyes. He then suggests why doesn't Yuta just copy the Six Eyes, but Shoko reminds him that the Six Eyes are a physical trait and not a technique that can be copied. Maki, who is concerned about the well-being of Yuta, reminds everybody that Yuta can only use his copy technique while Rika is fully manifested, and we know that this has a time limit of 5 minutes. She wonders what's going to happen to Yuta after those 5 minutes are up. Yuta isn't really sure what's going to happen, but Meme offers us some insights, as she has 3 possible scenarios. The first is that Kenjaku's ability requires constant activation, so in this case, once the 5 minutes are up, the body and the soul won't be able to be maintained, thus leading to Yuta's death. The second scenario is that Kenjaku's ability is activated intermittently, so Yuta won't die straight away, but it's only going to be a matter of time until he does die. The third scenario is that Kenjaku's ability only needs to be activated once, and even after the 5 minutes are up, he'll still be able to use the Limitless technique, thus allowing Yuta to live on forever within the body of Gojo. Yuta emphasizes that this is a final option. Before this, Yuta would like to use his copy ability within his own domain. If he fails, which we know that he has, then he has no other choice but to take over Gojo's body. Maki absolutely disagrees with this idea, as she tells Yuta to stop talking as if the matter is settled, because she doesn't like this plan one bit. Yuta appears to be getting annoyed, as he tells them that no matter how you look at it, this is what should be done. Kusakabe reiterates that this is all good if they're only focused on the plan, but he reminds Yuta that they are all concerned about him as a person. Yuta wonders if they realize who they are up against, telling them that this is the strongest sorcerer in history, Ryuman Sukuna. Yuta explains how he has no issue with throwing away his humanity as long as it gives them a chance of winning, as he then questions whether if becoming a monster scares them him this badly. Ignoring what Yuta has just said, Maki adds to Kusakabe's words, stating that he is very important to everybody here. This flashback deals with this conversation of what will happen if Gojo dies. Yuta has a bit of an outburst as he says, what about Gojo? Is he not important? The Jujutsu world has always pushed the burden of being a monster onto Gojo. If he dies, then somebody else will have to take his place. Yuta boldly states that if no one else wants to step up, then he will. We then cut to another flashback where Yuta is seen speaking to Gojo. Here he is asking his permission that if Gojo dies, then he would like to take over his body. Gojo was nonchalant about the matter because he was very confident that he wasn't going to lose. The entire matter of Yuta taking over Gojo's body didn't seem to bother Shoko, and this really annoyed Yuta. Changing the topic, Yuta tells Gojo that he was told that he was a descendant of the Fujiwara clan, but Yuta states that Gojo had told him that he was a member of the Sugawara clan or the Gojo clan. Gojo confirms what he had told him earlier by saying that both him and Yuta are distant relatives. He then reveals that the Fujiwara and Sugawara clans were on bad terms. Gojo reassures Yuta by telling him that he may have been born more blessed than even him. He tells him that it's pretty lame if he doesn't take advantage of this fact. He then reminds him that Yuta needs to refine his cursed energy control because it's frankly pretty sloppy. Gojo is constantly reminding Yuta of this, and it seems as though Yuta is pretty tired of hearing it. They then bump into Inumaki, Panda, and Maki. Gojo tells them that they can head back, but the three of them disagree. Because they are fellow sorcerers, he can't force them to leave, but he cares about them as his students, and he'd rather not show them something so gruesome, as he is unsure about whether if what he's about to do is morally right in the first place. Gojo states that he's going to defeat the Jujutsu higher-ups, so even if he loses to Sukuna, then Gakuganji will be effectively in charge. This means that they won't have to worry too much about the chaos that ensued after the Shibuya incident. He then tells them to leave again as he enters the room, but they disagree, stating that they are going to stay with him. Yuta tells Gojo not to just bear the burden of being a monster on his own. Gojo holds on to the door as he thinks that there's nothing that can be done about that, as he thinks back to his friend Geto and how he had allowed him to become a monster. So in some way, Gojo is taking on the burden of being a monster in order to make up for what had happened with Geto. We then cut to another moment where we see a civilian who was turned into a Jujutsu sorcerer, Rin Amai, as he gets to grips with understanding his own curse technique. He lifts a plate, revealing that he has created a dessert. He speaks about how it's like amplifying the sugar in his body and manifesting it in some way. He goes on to reveal that his curse technique makes him lightheaded because it lowers his blood sugar level. It's pretty insane that Yuji just straight up eats the dessert, considering that it's come from the blood of Rin. Shoko wonders whether if he is able to transfer his sugar to others. He states that he doesn't see why it shouldn't be possible. Shoko then says that he will be joining them on the medical team, as he will be delivering sugar in order to supplement the brain, which uses up glucose during curse technique activation. He appears to be pretty happy that he can help out, but he is warned not to overdo it, in the risk of him passing out because of low blood sugar. Things change though when he sees the bloodied condition of Yuta. Rei was able to use his technique in order to make it so that Yuta's wounds would not worsen. Yuta's body has been split in two just like Gojo's. This is way beyond anything that Yuta's reverse curse technique will be able to handle, let alone Rei's curse technique. We see Yuta laying badly injured as he states that he is able to maintain consciousness thanks to Rika, but he is reaching his limits. He tells Shoko that he's going to do it. It's their only choice. Shoko explains how Gojo's body has already been stitched back together. She tells Yuta that once he swaps bodies, he'll need to go full force with a reverse curse technique in order to finish treating Gojo's body. Rei will also be assisting him with this. We see Yuta smiling as he stares at his right hand, as he apologizes to Rika for having to move their promise ring to his right hand. Yuta's body is in such a critical state that it's no longer useful. We then cut to the present day as we see Gojo's body taken over by Yuta as well as Sukuna, both activating their domain expansion at the same time. They both use exactly the same hand sign, as the secret to counter Sukuna's open barrier domain was revealed by Gojo's hands. I don't know how many times it's been now, but once again we have Unlimited Void versus Malevolent Shrine. I'm a huge Gojo fan, and honestly I really would have loved if Gojo found some way to return to the story, but that was really unlikely, especially after his body was cut in two. There's a lot of controversy about this idea of Yuta taking over Gojo's body. Initially when the leaks were revealed, people had thought that Kenjaku had taken over Gojo's body, but thankfully with the release of chapter 261 it's finally been clarified that it is in fact Yuta using his copy technique in order to body hop into Gojo's corpse. There are people who think that Gege is getting really out of hand now and there are a lot of arse pulls or surprises going on at the moment, but I've just come to accept that Jujutsu Kaisen is just that type of story where the readers are going to have to suffer a great deal, and there's no use in having any favorite characters in a story like this. From the flashbacks that we've seen, we know that this was a contingency plan from the very get-go, and Yuta had at least asked for Gojo's permission in order to take over his body if Gojo dies. Now I know the question on everybody's mind is what's going to happen to Yuta after those 5 minutes are up. As stated by Mei, the three possibilities pretty much are that he's either instantly going to die or die slowly, or the third is that he's going to survive and thus live within Gojo's body forever. I wonder how the memories of Gojo within his body are going to interact with Yuta having taken over it. It's going to be interesting to see this bizarre fusion of Yuta and Gojo in action, and what is Yuji going to do now that he's kind of been sidelined? He was in the middle of trying to get revenge for the death of his brother Chozo, but as we know, Yuta isn't really the main protagonist of Jujutsu Kaisen. For a lot of people, Gojo is their favorite character and he's in some ways been the protagonist of the series, and he's now teamed up with Yuta, who of course was the original main character from Jujutsu Kaisen 0. We've now reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What do you guys think about the insane reveals within chapter 261 of Jujutsu Kaisen? How do you think the battle against the King of Curses Sukuna is going to unfold from here? And lastly, let me know your thoughts about the return of Gojo and the sacrifice of Yuta. I have no idea how much more suffering Gege wants to inflict upon Jujutsu Kaisen fans, but honestly I do hope that this is the ray of light that we need in order to put a stop to Sukuna once and for all. Because I think I speak for everyone when I say that enough is enough, so much has gone on, and the situation continuously gets from bad to worse. So let's hope that Yuta's last ditch plan to take over Gojo's body is effective and he doesn't just die after the 5 minutes are up. Now lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and if you want to see more Jujutsu Kaisen content like this, then definitely subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to seeing all of you in my next Jujutsu Kaisen video. A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.